Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Fulbright Distinguished Award in Teaching Program webinar focused on the Palestinian Territories. My name is Kim Young. I am from Boston, Massachusetts. I am a high school world history teacher. I've been teaching for about 13 years, and I'm also joined by my colleague.
My name is Marna Wallach. Welcome, and I'm a fifth grade bilingual teacher in San Francisco, California. I've been teaching for my 20th year. I've worked in Oakland and San Francisco, serving primarily students of Mexican and Central American descent.
Both Marna and I were 2014-2015 Fulbright DA teaching program participants. We were both in the Palestinian Territories from January to March of 2015. While Marna and I were there together, we want to emphasize that grantees are not guaranteed to be in country with another grantee or at the same time. So just a disclaimer, your experience may not be like ours. The Fulbright program the Fulbright Distinguished Awards in Teaching Program is sponsored by the United States Department of State, Bureau of Culture and Educational Affairs. It is administered by the Institute of International Education on behalf of the U.S. Department of State. The program aims to build teachers and students' global competence and share best educational practices internationally. Participants in this program go abroad for 3 to 6 months and are based at university-level schools of education.
So the components of the program are that you get to audit 1 to 2 courses at a host university. The courses will have some relevance to your project or your subject area. You will participate in local school visits, getting to observe classes and offer workshops, seminars in local schools, or basically what's requested of you. You get to participate in an online professional learning community with other participants, and you collaborate, sharing ideas, best practices, and you participate in your inquiry project, which is direct practical relevance to your classroom and educational practice.
I was specifically interested in traveling to the Palestinian Territories and having my Fulbright experience there because I was interested in an area of the world that had an intersection of political art, culture, and a very deep history. Coming from a world history background, I wanted to go to a place that was historically relevant thousands of years ago, but also very relevant today. I was specifically interested in the Palestinian Territories because of the growing canon of graphic literature about the area, both in English, French, and Arabic. A lot of really amazing graphic novels have been published from many different perspectives about the region. I was interested in investigating that in more depth. I was also looking for an area that I had personally perceived as being culturally different than my own. I was looking for experience in which I would kind of feel out of place or feel like everyone around me was different than I was, or that I felt uncomfortable, not necessarily in a bad way, but in a way that I wanted to go to a place that felt totally different and removed from the world I was currently in.
And for me, my interest in traveling to the region was that I also wanted to go somewhere that was very different from anywhere I'd ever been. I've traveled a lot in Latin America, and I've studied a lot about the history of this region, the Palestinian Territories, Israel, Middle East, and what I've never done. When I saw that there was this opportunity, I really wanted to take advantage of it, and I really wanted to see, what was life like, what was really going on in this place that's so historically significant. I also had done research about education in the region and was very intrigued by the fact that in the Palestinian Territories, they have the highest literacy rate for both boys and girls in the Arab world, and so I was how that was achieved and wanted to see how resilience is being fostered amidst all the stress living under military occupation. And so the title of my project was Palestinian Best Practices in Teaching for Student Academic Success and Resiliency, and I'll talk about that in a little bit.
So for me, I didn't really have a typical day as part of my participation in the DA program, but I had a pretty typical week. There were certain activities that I tended to participate in every week. The first being attending a class at Birzeit University outside of Ramallah. Twice a week, I would head into Birzeit for a class on called the Palestine Question, further investigating history of the Palestinian Territories from that university's perspective. Once a week, I also normally traveled somewhere in the region to conduct an artist interview. I was looking to interview different graphic and comic artists, some muralists, all different sorts of artists. So I'd spend a day traveling and meeting with an artist during the week. I also attended a lot of different cultural events, whether it be movies, art shows, lectures, premieres, food events, all sorts of different cultural events, different times of night, different times of the day. I also typically went into Jerusalem at least once a week, either for an artist visit or a cultural event. Here is a video I wanted to share with everyone of me walking around Menara Square in downtown Ramallah. I was based in Ramallah, and I wanted to show this video to show just kind of daily life, an average scene of what I'd see in my day. People, it was kind of a crowded urban area, different vendors along the street selling all sorts of different things. There's a strawberry vendor up to the left there, really, really good strawberries. People, old, young, middle-aged, shoe stores, everyone's just walking along, doing their average day. I think we've got some Arabic coffee coming up and being delivered. So just kind of all the sights and sounds of the city in Ramallah, really busy, hustle and bustle, kind of like any major urban city anywhere in the world. So it just kind of shows me walking around my home city.
And for me, a typical day, I was living in Beit Sahur, it's a town just outside of Bethlehem, so I could walk to Bethlehem University. During, I would attend one class per day, two classes that met twice a week. And I would attend the class, maybe do some school visits, interview university students, and like I said, attend cultural events. There's always something happening to attend. And yeah, basically, if you go to the next slide, I think there's, oh, sorry, wrong one. Nothing more to say about that. That was a typical day.
Okay. So there are many, many program highlights. So Martin and I have tried to narrow it down to a couple of major ones. First of all, a major highlight for me being in the Palestinian Territories was how welcoming everyone and how everyone was and how interconnected the communities were. I found that once I met one person, they were able to introduce me to the next person and the next person, and circling back, they say, oh, you know, so-and-so. So once you were able to get into one door, you were in all of the doors because everybody kind of knows everybody else. So it was a really interesting difference from my life in Boston, where I sometimes don't even know my neighbors. It felt like once I got to know one person, even my roommate, he ended up knowing someone I was interviewing from childhood and then was able to connect me to this other person. Everybody was always interconnected. Another major program highlight for me was, even though I decided on going to the Palestinian Territories because it was an area that I had perceived as being an area of cultural difference, what I think shocked me the most was how similar things were, and that I didn't experience the culture shock and the sense of kind of otherness or difference that I had expected, and being in an area that I initially perceived as being different from my own. I arrived in Ramallah to a giant snowstorm, which is something I know how to deal with. I had my hat, boot, and mittens and was ready to go. My experiences were people are people all across the world, and I was not kind of surprised to find when I went searching for difference, all I found were similarities. It was a huge highlight for me to be in the Palestinian territories because I was able to gain a much more complex perspective on the different global events that are impacting the region at this time. I felt like I came away hearing a lot of different people's opinions on many, many different facets of all of the challenges and accomplishments of the region, and I feel like it's something I now have a much better global perspective on that I can really bring back to my classroom.
And for me, similarly, just feeling so welcome. Palestinians are very welcoming. That's the word that you get on the street while you're walking every day. People say, "Ahlan wa sahlan," that's welcome. So you're constantly being welcome, and it's this genuine welcome where you feel like you automatically feel comfortable in the place, even though it is so far away, it's so close to home. And for me, highlights were also just the relationships that I was able to establish with university students. Very close relationships formed. And I really enjoyed living in the small community where I live of Beit Sahur. I live in a big city here, San Francisco, and it was nice to live in a small place, say hello to each other, easy walk to Bethlehem. I also it was just very eye-opening after having learned before participating in the program, thinking I knew a lot about what I might be seeing being there and experiencing everything firsthand. The situation faced by Palestinians in the Palestinian Territories was very eye-opening and definitely changed my perspective in many ways.
So Marna, what slide can you currently see? Because my computer is starting to freeze at this point.
Okay, I see my program highlights.
Okay, so it's still on your program highlights, and I've got the spiral of.
Those of you who are watching, so this photo that you're looking at is outside of my window in Beit Sahur, looking out my kitchen window over the hillside. So if you were to walk out the front door, you would just walk right up the hill and you would be in Bethlehem.
Oh, and can you see the wedding now? Is that up?
Yes. So
Okay.
one of the events that I attended at Bethlehem University with with a university student, I was interviewing with students who are studying to be teachers, studying to be English teachers. So if you are not an Arabic speaker, as I am not, it is very easy to establish relationships because many people do speak English, and so the classes that I attended, there were English speakers. The students are studying to be English teachers, and so one of those teachers invited me to this mock wedding at the university, which was very beautiful. I didn't get to attend a real wedding, but participating in a mock wedding was just as good. You can see the beautiful colors and some of the festivities there.
I think another major highlight for both of us is we were able to spend a lot of time outside of the cities on weekend hikes. There's different hiking clubs and hiking groups. There's a growing culture of walking in the Palestinian Territories. So most weekends, Marna and I were able to head out in the countryside and attend some really wonderful walks and see some amazing scenery and wildflowers.
And those hikes are led by Palestinian guides. In this next slide, you just see me with some of the university students who I was able to spend a lot of time with and interview.
So in the end, my project, I ended up spending a lot of time, as I said, interviewing and talking with artists. And as a result of that, I developed several different lesson plans and teacher guides. One of the lesson plans I developed was a structured academic controversy using different primary sources, which guides students through a discussion about the role of cartooning in free speech. While I was in the Palestinian Territories, the Charlie Hebdo shooting happened, and there was a lot of interesting discussion amongst Palestinians around freedom of speech and different kind of multicultural and different perspectives on freedom of speech. I also developed a guide to using graphic novels in the history classroom, a tool to help teachers with their teaching about issues in the Middle East or issues anywhere else, or just a tool for kind of visual literacy, but with a historical lens in mind. Through my interviews, I also developed a brief history of cartooning in the Palestinian Territories and understanding the artist's different perspectives on the medium. I also collected and currently continuing to curate new content and resources from artists in the Palestinian Territories that are kind of graphic or comic-based in nature. And I hope to continue to expand that collection.
My project, as mentioned earlier, was about looking into best practices in teaching for student academic success and resiliency. And so I had set out to, I thought I would spend the bulk of my time in 1 or 2 elementary schools, but really what it ended up morphing into was interviews with students, university students who are studying to be teachers, and also interviewing professors. And I was able to visit many schools, but also visit community organizations where I really noticed where I got to see that the resiliency was being fostered in different ways than in the schools. And so what I've done is I put together a multimedia presentation, which includes recommendations for better addressing, not only just talking about my experience, but also for some ideas for how we might better address the needs of our students, especially our most at-risk students here in urban settings in the United States. And I've presented to staff and colleagues in San Francisco. I'm going to be presenting at the Teaching for Social Justice conference coming up on October 10th as well here in San Francisco. And this slide that you're looking at right now just shows some images from one of the schools I visited, some of the stuff on the walls, and then up on the right-hand corner you'll see a map. There was a community organization that I visited, and they did outreach in local villages at the schools and looking at instructional practices that increase student engagement. And so I was able to go through that organization, visit some of the schools that they go to and model lessons at.
And Marna already mentioned some of the work she's been able to do in transferring her project into impacting her community, both within her district and her larger community of San Francisco. Some of the ways I've been able to use my project to impact the community have been twofold. First of all, in just kind of expanding the diversity of curriculum about the Palestinian Territories using graphic content and the diversity of Palestinian identity. I've been doing that and hoping to, and I will be presenting that curriculum at National Councils for the Social Studies in New Orleans this November. But I've also been working with the Global Studies Outreach Center at Harvard and the Global Competency Certificate Program, just in general to transition my curriculum to be one that focuses more on teaching global competencies to students, and that was heavily impacted by my experiences in the Palestinian Territories. I'm hoping to work with these organizations to rewrite and rethink our 9th grade curriculum that's being used at our school to better incorporate global competencies into the skill sets students are learning. I'm also hoping to continue working with Jewish Voice for Peace in terms of community education and bringing more knowledge and community awareness.
Yeah, and I'm connected with Jewish Voice for Peace here in San Francisco and attend different events that are happening, and just it's just networking with people about experiences that we've had in the region and encouraging more people like those of you who are watching us to apply and part in this amazing experience.
So hopefully now you're super inspired and really, really excited and feeling, if you had any questions about, kind of taking that leap into putting an application in for the Palestinian Territories, now you're like, yes, I'm going. Okay, what should I do? How should I do it? A couple of tips from us. You definitely want to make your proposal specific to the Palestinian Territories. It should be a project that kind of could only happen there and has to happen on the ground. There's a need to go there in order to do it. But you also need to balance that with kind of having an idea. You can research universities, you can get an idea of where you may want to go, but there are no guarantees. While Marna and I were over there, we were told we had to limit our university choices and living choices to Bethlehem, Ramallah, and Jericho. That may or may not be the case when you're over there, so you want to have a country or a territory-specific plan, but you also want to be flexible and open-minded as to where your actual placement might be.
Yeah, in my case, I did a little bit of research before I applied, and I really was inspired by the mission statement at Bethlehem University. So that is the place that I did put on my application that I would like to attend. And when I arrived, then the consulate put me in contact with someone who works there. So yeah, a little bit of research, but don't count on getting the university of your choice before. So you don't have to do too much work in that way.
Do some research, but definitely be flexible. I also found, I did not have a university in mind when I wrote the application. I had a country or territory-specific proposal, but I hadn't necessarily narrowed it down to years 8. I definitely knew I wanted to focus on Ramallah because of the number of artists who were living there. I had done a lot of research on where the studios were and where the graphic arts were being produced. And then with the help of the consulate, was able to find a university that did have some English-based classes. Majority of people in the Palestinian Territories do speak some English. Not all university classes are offered in English. So there was a lot of flexibility to the plan that had to happen to find a classroom that I could be in to make the time worthwhile.
And so if you have any questions for Kim or I, you can contact Fulbright, that you'll be seeing on your screen. And you can contact them, and they will put you in touch with us, because I would love to answer any questions that you might have and really encourage you to apply to go to the region.
It's an experience that will absolutely change you as a teacher, increase your global perspective. It's a risk absolutely worth taking. It's a kind of life-changing event. You see the email addresses up there. We'd love to get in touch with you, tell you more about our experiences, and help you out in any way we can. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.
Wonder of technology. We can try and put this together.
Thank you. Good luck.
Best of luck, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.